Okay, so now we're going to look at the second core concept, the model of constructive alignment. So before we dig into the theory, let's just have a look at the term itself and break it down. So the constructive part relates to what we were learning about in the last video, and it has its foundation in constructivism. So the theory that learners construct knowledge through experience, connecting new experiences and information to what they already know, what they think they already know. And that's how they make sense of things. So learning is actively constructive and not passively received. And the alignment part is pretty straightforward. So what we're referring to here is the alignment of the teaching and assessment with the learning outcomes. So the overall goals for your module. So we set up what we want students to achieve, our intended learning outcomes. And then we set up our teaching sessions to facilitate that through aligned teaching and learning activities, and then the students are assessed with assessment tasks that match up to those, which demonstrate how well they have met those learning outcomes. So that's alignment. So if we put these two things together, with an aligned system, the teacher creates a learning environment that supports the achievement of the intended learning outcomes through facilitating appropriate teaching and learning activities, or TLAs. So the intended learning outcomes demonstrate the level of understanding that we want the students to achieve. And the teacher chooses assessment tasks that will demonstrate how well the student has achieved those learning outcomes. So at BIM, obviously most of the time the module learning outcomes are provided for you, as are the assessment tasks. And these should be pretty well aligned, although I will say that there is room for improvement in lots of cases, but it's what we've got and we can't change it for the moment. So as teachers are tasked to align what happens in and outside of the classroom, and make sure that it lines up with the module learning outcomes and the assessment task in the module. So we can do this by creating an aligned scheme of work, which scaffolds the skills and knowledge required for success through carefully designed intended learning outcomes each week, teaching and learning activities, so what the students are actually doing in class each week, and formative assessment tasks, so the opportunities that students have to actually test out those skills and get feedback on those skills and that understanding. So constructive alignment is a module that was devised by John Biggs, who, if you've done the PG Cert, you'll know quite a lot about. So he says that constructive alignment starts with the notion that the learner constructs his or her own learning through relevant activities. So constructivism. The teacher's job is to create a learning environment that supports the learning activities appropriate to achieving the desired learning outcomes. The key is that all components in the teaching system, the curriculum and its intended outcomes, the teaching methods used, the assessment tasks, are all aligned to each other. So all are tuned to learning activities addressed in the desired learning outcomes, and the learner finds it difficult to escape without learning appropriately. So he often says that if the students actually turn up, then they're trapped and they have to learn because of the way it's been set up. So we've mentioned learning outcomes quite a lot in this video, and there's a whole separate video dedicated to these by the wonderful John Harper, which is coming in the next chapter. But quickly before we move on, I just want to touch on what Biggs says about learning outcomes. Well, he says a lot, but this is one of the things he says. So writing active learning outcomes is a really important part of this model, and typically active learning outcomes are much clearer and more straightforward. And we want the students to be able to read them and actually understand what it is they're supposed to do. So learning activities are explicit in the choice of verb. So, for example, explain the theory of constructivism, write an effective learning outcome, critique the concept of alignment. What the students actually have to actively do is really clear in the learning outcome. And for another perspective, I thought this short clip defines it quite nicely. It's always nice to have someone else explain something, so I'm just going to quickly press play on this.
Now, while there seems to be no shortage of diagrams on the internet, I've tried to think of constructively aligned learning as a sort of journey between A and B, and tried to illustrate it this way, with the students maybe being thought of as explorers, asking questions or investigating and integrating learning with what they already know about the world and where they want to go. And in this context, the teacher functions more as a guide or facilitator or accelerator almost for learning, and their role is to point the way or create a context or present a roadmap of sorts to give the student the tools basically to achieve the goals and mark out the various stages of the learning path. So thinking then again of these three elements of learning or course design, you maybe have in the first instance like an aspiration or reason for starting a journey that is your intended outcome. Then maybe some idea of what success looks like that reflects the learning outcomes, that would be your assessment. And then the teaching and learning activity is what sort of encourages and improves progress towards this outcome, maybe helping to avoid common pitfalls or the importance of effort or practice, maybe encouragement. Hopefully it's sort of obvious here then that when these elements are not aligned, you have a scenario where students effectively have barriers that actually complicate their learning or get in the way of their success, a sort of obstacle course. However, in a constructively aligned course, students are able to take the necessary steps to progress, hopefully arriving in a new place with new knowledge and new horizons.
So, I wish I could tell you who actually made that video, but the internet is just devoid of that information. I like to pretend it's Aidan Turner, because it's quite a nice voice. But yeah, I really don't know. But I think it is, it defines it quite nicely. Please excuse me, I am drinking beer, but it's Sunday. So, anyway, why align? What's the benefit of all of this? Well, by taking a consistent and logical approach, students can see clearly what to focus on and how to demonstrate their learning during assessment. So it might sound a bit formulaic, but it actually encourages you to be more active and have more fun, whilst also ensuring there is some kind of structure, some kind of method to whatever madness you choose. And students can actually track their progress this way, and you can track their progress too. So there's more built-in feedback, and they're clearer about what they're supposed to have learned each week and whether they've been successful. And regular linking to assessment helps motivate students who are perhaps less intrinsically motivated than we would like with their studies. And in general, as a model, it helps us keep focused on the long-term goals of the module, whilst enabling students to progress each week, to keep building their skills and to gain confidence. So that's it for this short video. Now you are welcome to move on to core concept number 3, where we're going to unpack the SoW taxonomy. So here we're going to learn more about pitching the right level of learning activity and begin thinking about effective intended learning outcomes as well.